Okay, let's jump right in and talk about something a lot of us start to notice, but maybe don't really understand. I'm talking about that slow, creeping feeling of losing strength as we get older. Is it just something we have to accept? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and really dig into the science behind it. You know that catch all phrase we all use? Oh, I'm just getting old. We say it to explain away everything, right? From a new ache in our back to just not having the same get up and go. But when we're talking about muscle strength, that simple explanation, well, it's missing some really, really important pieces of the puzzle. I mean, come on, who hasn't been there? Staring down a pickle jar that might as well be welded shut. Or getting halfway up a flight of stairs and thinking, wow, were these always this steep? If that sounds familiar, I want you to know you are definitely not just imagining things. It's a very real thing that a lot of people go through. And here's the crucial point. What you're feeling isn't just some vague side effect of your birthday count going up. No, it's a specific, measurable, biological process happening inside your body. And really getting a handle on that process, that's the first step to doing something about it. And that process has a name. It's called sarcopenia. Just giving this experience a clinical name is actually incredibly powerful. It takes it out of that fuzzy category of just getting old and puts it right into the category of something we can actually understand and, more importantly, address. So let's take a closer look at what this really means. Progressive, that means it happens over time, kind of sneaky. Generalized means it's not just your biceps, it's happening to muscles all over your body. And this is key. Notice it says both muscle mass and strength. That's a huge detail because you can actually start losing strength even faster than you lose the actual size of the muscle. And listen, this isn't some rare, obscure condition we're talking about. We're looking at up to 30%. That's nearly 1 out of every 3 adults over the age of 60 who might be dealing with this. It's a huge, widespread issue, and that's exactly why it's so critical to understand what's really going on beneath the surface. Okay, so we've got the what, sarcopenia. Now for the fun part. Let's put on our detective hats and figure out the why. And our investigation is going to start with the body's command center, the nervous system, and that all-important communication line between your brain and your muscles. So think of your nervous system kind of like an electrical grid. Your brain, the power station, sends out a command. That signal zips down a wire, that's the motor neuron, and tells a muscle fiber, hey, contract. But as you can see in these later steps, over time, some of those wires can start to fray or degrade. The signal gets weaker, and some muscle fibers end up basically disconnected, kind of orphaned from the main grid. But wait, the story doesn't stop there, because a signal from the brain is really only half of the conversation. Our investigation has to look at the other end of the line, the muscle tissue itself. Because, you see, even if the signal gets through loud and clear, the muscle still has to be able to, well, listen and respond properly. And this right here perfectly explains the next big piece of the puzzle. A concept called anabolic resistance. I want you to imagine your muscles have ears. When you're younger, you eat some protein or do some exercise, and your muscles hear those growth signals loud and clear. They get right to work building and repairing. But as we get older, our muscles can become a little hard of hearing. The same amount of protein just doesn't get the same strong muscle-building response that it used to. So we've looked at the wiring from the brain and the muscle's ability to hear the message. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The overall environment these muscles are living in day to day. And this brings in 2 more huge factors, inflammation and energy. This brings us to a really fascinating and pretty new idea in the science of aging. It's called inflammaging. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's this combination of chronic, low-grade inflammation that tends to creep up as we get older. And this quote just nails it. Think about that hard of hearing muscle we were just talking about. Well, inflammaging is like having constant background noise or static on the telephone line. It just makes it even harder for those important growth and repair signals to get through clearly, and that just speeds up the whole muscle loss process. So we've got a communication problem, a reception problem, and an environmental problem with all that static. But every single system needs energy to run. So what about the power source for all this muscle maintenance and repair? Where's the juice coming from? This chart really shows it all, plain and simple. What we're looking at here is the energy output from our mitochondria. You can think of these as the tiny little power plants inside every one of our cells. And as we age, these power plants, they just get less efficient. They don't produce as much energy. This means there's simply less cellular fuel available for the really demanding job of building and repairing our muscle tissue. All right, we have gathered all of our clues. We've looked at the nerves, the muscles themselves, the inflammatory environment, and the energy supply. Now it's time to put it all together and finally solve this mystery of age-related muscle loss. So here's the bottom line. It is not one single bad guy. Sarcopenia is what we call a multifactorial condition. It's the combination of all these things hitting at once. The communication from the brain gets a little weaker, the muscle becomes less responsive, you've got this background of chronic inflammation, and then you have a dip in the cellular energy needed for upkeep. It's like they all work together to create the perfect storm for muscle loss. And honestly, this is the most important thing to walk away with today. Just knowing why this is happening, understanding that it is a real physiological process and not just a vague feeling, that is the most powerful first step you can possibly take. Because you can't start to solve a problem until you really understand what's causing it. So we've laid out the what and the why. By understanding this really complex dance of all these different factors, you're no longer in the dark about it. You're now armed with knowledge. So the question isn't if you can take action. The real question is, what's your next step going to be?